Welcome to a special compilation from Changes Big and Small. I'm your AI host, and we're doing something a little different today.
That's right.
This is actually an AI experiment, kind of a unique way to revisit some key insights from our past discussions here. Now, Damianne will be back with you next time. She's bringing a brand new conversation about finding joy in connections with a special guest. So look out for that.
And what's really great about this compilation, I think, is the chance to weave together the core ideas around joy that we've explored over the previous 13 deep dives.
Yeah, 13 of them.
Think of it as, well, a focused look at what we've learned, a kind of distilled essence of different perspectives on joy, and maybe some practical ways you can bring more of it into your own life.
Okay, let's dive right in them. Right at the start of this season, Damianne's initial curiosity, which we explored in that first deep dive on joy, really got us thinking, didn't it? About the difference between joy and happiness.
It did. That initial exploration was really about setting up a working understanding of joy. Because while happiness often feels tied to external things, circumstances, and it can be fleeting.
Yeah, comes and goes.
Exactly. Joy, the way Damianne framed it, feels more like a profound, more enduring sense of inner well-being.
So like the dictionary definitions we looked at, joy being about well-being, success, good fortune, that feeling of delight.
Yes, those were the starting points. But our conversations definitely leaned more towards joy as that deeper, more internal state, sort of a foundation.
And it was interesting how the idea came up that for some people, joy might feel like it has a spiritual source, maybe divine. But the really crucial point, I thought, was that no matter your personal beliefs, the capacity for joy is something inside all of us. It's available.
Absolutely. And Damian's discussions really brought to light some significant hurdles many women in particular face when trying to tap into that inherent joy.
Oh, yeah. What were some of those?
Well, things like the constant juggling act, right?
Yeah.
Prioritizing goals alongside all the responsibilities, the challenge of making a living doing something you actually enjoy.
That's a big one.
Huge. Then there's the draining effect of work that just doesn't feel fulfilling, and that guilt people sometimes feel about taking time for leisure.
Right? Like you should be productive.
Exactly. That should. And honestly, just plain exhaustion. Sometimes there's just no room left for joy.
Wow. Yeah. Those obstacles really paint a picture of how life's demands can just, well, overshadow our natural capacity for joy.
They really can.
And that makes me think of that quote from Valerie Kaur that really stuck with me. The thing about joy is that you can't force it. You can only create the conditions to invite it to come.
That's such a powerful way to put it. Setting the stage intentionally.
Yeah, creating the conditions.
It is key. And it leads us nicely into a perhaps surprising idea. The possibility of finding joy even when life is really challenging. That was explored in the deep dive on experiencing joy during life's challenges.
Right. How can those two things possibly coexist? Joy and hardship.
Well, that's the fascinating part, isn't it? We learned that even when facing chronic difficulties, and that's a lot of adults, maybe around 40%, many people still find ways to experience moments of joy.
Like Damianne's personal story. During that tough time after university, finding that little lift in a daily coffee break.
Exactly. It showed how even small anchors of pleasure can make a real difference.
So it's not about pretending everything's okay. That toxic positivity thing.
Definitely not. It's not about forcing positivity. It's more about creating space for the full range of emotions, the difficult ones included, while still staying open to those moments of light, those sparks of joy.
Okay, so it's back to that distinction between happiness and joy again.
Precisely. Happiness often feels dependent on things going our way externally, so it's temporary by nature.
Right.
Joy, though, seems to be rooted more deeply within us, often fueled by things like gratitude or a sense of purpose. It's that internal wellspring that allows joy to coexist with hardship, not denying the difficulty, but experiencing joy alongside it.
It makes you think about different cultural views too, doesn't it? We touched on how some Eastern philosophies or indigenous traditions see suffering not just as something bad to avoid,
But potentially as part of the path to deeper meaning.
yeah.
It reframes that whole relationship between joy and adversity.
So for you listening, what does this mean practically? How can you actually cultivate joy when things are tough?
Well, we explored several strategies. One is cultivating mindful awareness, really noticing the small, everyday pleasures.
Like that coffee break example.
Exactly. Another is strengthening meaningful connections with people. That's powerful. Aligning your actions with your core values gives you that sense of inner congruence, which feels good. Finding purpose beyond just your own happiness can be incredibly grounding too.
And gratitude. That came up again.
Always gratitude.
Yeah.
Developing a consistent practice helps shift your focus towards what you do have instead of what's missing or difficult.
And we looked at even more specific tactics for maintaining joy during challenges, right?
We did. Things like understanding your own energy patterns. When are you most productive? When do you need rest? And matching tasks to those levels.
Building in recovery periods, too. So important.
Crucial to avoid burnout. Also, consciously building your support networks, both emotional and practical.
And being able to actually ask for help and accept it.
Yes. Communicating your needs clearly and then learning to accept help gracefully when it's offered. That's a skill in itself.
We even talked about adapting practices for specific challenges, like loss of control.
Right, using things like micro-routines, focusing on what you can influence, having flexible backup plans, accepting uncertainty, and scheduling predictable moments of joy.
Or disrupted patterns.
Yeah, creating new rituals, adapting to limitations, finding alternative ways to connect, establishing fresh rhythms, seeking new sources of meaning.
And when resources feel depleted.
Honoring those energy patterns becomes even more vital. Breaking tasks down, prioritizing recovery, tapping into community resources, and finding joy activities that don't require a ton of energy.
It sounds like celebrating small progress is important, too.
Very much so. And not forgetting Lai Webb's point about the joy found in service to others, even when we're struggling ourselves.
That focus on inner resources, on what we can cultivate within ourselves, brings us really nicely to resilience, doesn't it? Sustaining joy through life's inevitable ups and downs.
Absolutely. Our deep dive on building resilience highlighted two really powerful tools for exactly that.
What were they again?
Well, the first was forgiveness. And it's key to understand this isn't about excusing bad behavior or saying what happened was okay.
Right, not condoning it.
No. It's more like a conscious act of releasing the emotional weight you're carrying because of past hurts. We use the metaphor of taking off a heavy backpack.
Yes, freeing up energy.
Exactly. Energy that can then be channeled towards things that bring you joy.
And the second tool?
With self-compassion, which is basically treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a good friend who's going through a hard time.
Okay, and that had 3 parts.
It did. Self-kindness, which is actively being gentle with yourself. Common humanity, recognizing that everyone struggles, you're not alone in your pain. And mindfulness, being aware of your difficult feelings without judgment.
I remember those simple phrases like,
Ooh.
this is hard right now, but I'm here for myself.
Or Tara Brach's, it's okay, sweetheart. Those can be incredibly soothing in tough moments.
There was another concept too, sonder.
Ah, yes, sonder. That realization that every single person you pass has a life as vivid and complex as your own, filled with their own joys, sorrows, struggles.
It kind of broadens your perspective.
It really does. It helps you feel less isolated in your own challenges.
Yeah.
Ultimately, building forgiveness and self-compassion helps us let go of what's weighing us down.
Choosing peace, choosing freedom, decluttering the mind, maybe.
Precisely. Limiting exposure to things that trigger negativity, practicing being present. It all supports that sense of inner freedom.
Yeah, all this talk about inner resources and cultivating things, it leads to something really fundamental. We can't really nurture joy if we're just running on empty, can we?
Not effectively, no. Which is why our deep dive into what high achievers often get wrong really stress the importance of rest and sleep.
It seems obvious, but it's easily overlooked.
It is. And the research is pretty clear. Sleep deprivation messes with our ability to feel positive emotions, including joy, and cranks up the volume on negative feelings.
And yet, society often seems to, undervalue rest, glorify being busy.
That hustle culture, exactly. It directly undermines our well-being and consequently our capacity for joy.
And it wasn't just about getting enough sleep, was it? It was about the quality and different types of rest.
Correct. We explored the idea that we actually need 4 different kinds. Physical rest, obviously, but also mental, emotional, and creative rest.
Mental rest from constant thinking, emotional rest from processing feelings, creative rest allowing for inspiration.
Exactly. Recognizing and making space for each of those is crucial for feeling truly restored.
So what were some practical tips?
Well, prioritizing sleep consistently, creating a relaxing bedtime routine, optimizing your bedroom environment, but also intentionally scheduling different types of rest into your day or week.
Learning to say no, setting boundaries.
Huge ones.
Yeah.
Saying no to overcommitment, setting clear boundaries around your time and energy, creating buffer times between activities so you're not always rushing.
And maybe even tracking how rest affects your joy levels. Noticing the connection.
That can be really insightful, yes. And remember that simple morning habit, taking 3 deep breaths and thinking of something you're grateful for before even getting out of bed.
Yeah, starting the day with intention.
A small thing, but it can set a more positive tone.
That idea of setting a positive tone connects well with how we approach challenges in learning, doesn't it? Our deep dive on cultivating a growth mindset talked about this.
It did. And one interesting reframe was about self-doubt, instead of seeing it only as a negative.
See it as a sign of growth.
Potentially, yes. It often means you're stepping outside your comfort zone, which is exactly where learning and growth happen.
We talked about a visualization exercise too.
Ah, yes. Imagining your future self, who has already overcome a challenge you're facing now, and then writing down the advice that future self would give you, kind of tapping into your own future wisdom.
And detaching from the outcome seems key when learning something new.
Absolutely. Focusing on appreciating the process of learning itself rather than just fixating on the end result.
Asking those playful questions. How can this be 10% more fun?
Or what would learning look like if I approached it with playfulness? Or even, what would it look like if this was easy? It shifts the energy completely.
Framing goals as small experiments too takes the pressure off.
Exactly. Trusting the process, being kind to yourself when you stumble, it makes learning much more joyful.
And speaking of journeys, midlife often presents a significant opportunity for finding renewed joy through reinvention. We had a deep dive specifically on that.
We did. Midlife often brings big shifts, career changes, family dynamics shifting, physical changes.
Brene Brown's concept of unraveling came up.
Yes, that idea that old coping mechanisms might not work anymore. Creating space, sometimes uncomfortable space, for something new to emerge.
And if we don't actively engage with that, redefining purpose or joy.
Well, the risk is that our sense of fulfillment might start to decrease. It requires conscious engagement.
I remember the balance beam analogy.
Yes, that feeling of being in transition, one foot, leaving the old beam, not quite firmly on the new one yet. That mix of uncertainty and possibility.
So what were the steps for navigating that reinvention more joyfully?
We outlined 5 key things. First, really reflecting on the changes you're noticing. Second, identifying what genuinely brings you joy now, and also what consistently drains you.
Looking back too, at past joys.
Yes. Third step, recalling moments or activities that brought you joy in previous life stages. Sometimes clues are hidden there. Fourth, making actual lists. More joy and less joy.
Making it concrete.
Exactly. And fifth, actively creating the conditions for more joy in your current life, considering your environment, your community, everything around you.
But often, what stops us from making these changes, or finding joy in general, are those limiting beliefs we carry. That was another deep dive, right?
A really important one. Limiting beliefs are essentially thoughts that just don't serve us anymore. They might be rooted in past experiences, things we were told, societal messages.
Like the example of the client with chronic pain who believed she couldn't exercise at all.
Precisely. It shows how these beliefs can really restrict our actions and our possibilities.
So how do you challenge them?
Well, the process involves first really identifying the belief clearly, then actively looking for evidence that contradicts it. There's usually some evidence, even if small.
Finding exceptions to the rule.
Kind of. And then the crucial step is creating a new, more supportive belief. Something that feels believable to you, even if it's just a small step up from the old one. It doesn't have to be wildly optimistic, just more helpful.
And a common one people wrestle with is that idea that work and joy can't coexist, right?
Oh, absolutely. That work has to be hard or draining. Challenging that specific belief can be incredibly liberating for many people.
Journaling about these beliefs was suggested.
Yes, writing down your top limiting beliefs, gathering that counter evidence, and crafting those new beliefs can be a really powerful practice. And drafting a personal mission statement can act as a guidepost, helping you align your choices with what truly brings you meaning and joy.
Okay, so let's connect joy more directly to our physical well-being. The deep dive on taking wellness from frustration to freedom had a really interesting take.
It did. The core idea was that joy isn't just a happy side effect of being healthy. It can actually be a powerful driver of lasting health and wellness, especially as we navigate midlife.
It really pushes back against that old no pain, no gain mindset, doesn't it?
Completely. The perspective offered was that prioritizing pleasure and joy in movement and eating can actually lead you to choices that feel more aligned and sustainable for your unique body.
Like the story of Jane rediscovering gentle movement she actually enjoyed.
Exactly. And developing a more peaceful relationship with food, free from rigid rules. It connects back to that idea of approaching goals with an experimental mindset, like we mentioned, with growth mindset, focusing on discovery rather than just outcomes.
And underpinning so much of this, our relationship with ourselves, our challenges, our well-being, is emotional intelligence. That was another key deep dive.
Foundational, really. Emotional intelligence, with its four main parts, self-awareness, self-management, awareness of others, and managing relationships, is so crucial for overall well-being and our ability to access joy.
And mindfulness is key there, just noticing thoughts, feelings, sensations.
Yes, that practice of simply noticing what's happening internally, thoughts, physical feelings, emotions, without immediately judging or reacting is a core skill.
There was talk of a coming home feeling during meditation or big love.
Right. Those experiences that can arise when we cultivate inner awareness, a sense of deep peace, connection, or profound positive emotion, it highlights the potential of looking inward.
And creating small routines for joy throughout the day.
Very impactful. Maybe a quick check-in morning, afternoon, and evening. Even just stating your self-care intentions to yourself can make a difference.
Understanding those core emotions, anger, fear, sadness, joy, surprise, love, and how they feel in the body.
Yes, recognizing their physical manifestations deepens self-awareness, and actively practicing things like savoring positive moments or cultivating awe can directly amplify feelings of joy.
It sounds like really carving out time to get to know yourself better is essential, developing that emotional vocabulary.
It truly is, but in our modern world, there's another factor influencing our joy: technology.
Ah, yes, the conversation with Michelle Dickinson on mindful tech use.
Michelle made the great point that technology itself isn't inherently good or bad for our joy. It's all about how we use it, intentionally.
Because mindless scrolling or constant notifications can easily pull us away from things that actually nourish us, right?
Exactly. They become digital distractions. So being more mindful and intentional is key.
What were some examples of mindful tech use?
Things like having phone-free mornings or evenings, choosing to journal instead of scrolling social media when you have downtime, using mindfulness apps purposefully.
So it's about noticing what tech use adds to your joy and what takes away from it.
Precisely that. Becoming aware of the impact and making conscious choices based on that awareness.
And speaking of things that add joy, let's talk about creative expression. That deep dive on the 1-minute morning habit was fascinating.
It really challenged that common idea that creativity is only for artists.
Right. It framed creativity much more broadly as self-expression, as the simple joy of making something, anything new.
Katrina Basin's idea of being a radical more optimist and following the crumbs of joy really captured that spirit, I thought.
And that 1-minute morning habit, just checking in with yourself. What do I want or need today? Before jumping into everyone else's demands.
Such a simple but potentially powerful way to reconnect with your own inner world and maybe spark some creative impulse, whatever form that takes.
Because creativity isn't just painting or writing, is it?
Not at all. It can be cooking, gardening, problem solving, arranging flowers, how you organize your space, anything that involves bringing your unique perspective into the world.
We touched on the challenge many women face. Though after years of prioritizing others, sometimes they genuinely don't know what they enjoy anymore.
That's a real hurdle. It requires rediscovery. Katrina's own practice of setting intentions each morning and her experience of traveling Australia as a form of creative living were inspiring examples of living intentionally.
And making space for creativity involved thinking about physical space, time, and energy.
Yes, having supplies accessible, creating an inspiring corner perhaps, scheduling small blocks of creative time, even just 10 minutes, and honoring your energy rhythms, experimenting without pressure.
What about getting blocked?
The advice was often just to start before you feel ready. Focus on the process, not perfection. Maybe use prompts or constraints to get going.
Okay, one final major theme we explored was how our internal shoulds can block joy. That conversation with Amanda Hess.
Ugh, should thinking. Those rigid expectations we have about how we should be, how others should act, how the world should work.
They create so much negative emotion, don't they?
They really do. And while the brain has a natural negativity bias, these shoulds often pour fuel on that fire, leading to frustration, resentment, disappointment, all joy blockers.
There was a distinction made between happiness and joy again here.
Yes, happiness sometimes being performative, trying to meet those external shoulds, versus joy being more grounded in acceptance and genuine connection.
What was that exercise Amanda suggested, writing down your manual?
Right. Writing down all the unspoken rules you have for how you and others should behave.
Yeah.
It can be eye-opening to see those expectations laid bare.
Because those shoulds often come from a place of trying to control things, not really generosity or love.
Exactly. It's about control. Cultivating curiosity about why people act the way they do, connecting with their humanity rather than judging them against your manual, is the antidote.
But letting go of shoulds can feel scary, like losing control.
That fear can definitely come up, but the liberation on the other side is often worth it. Like the client example who had a very regimented way of eating based on shoulds and found freedom by questioning them.
And the simple question to ask, when a should pops up.
What if that's not true? Just planting that seed of doubt about the absolute necessity of the should.
Okay, so bringing all these threads together, that final deep dive we'll touch on, focused on transforming self-criticism using gratitude and positive self-talk.
Two really practical tools for shifting mindset and inviting more joy. Gratitude, as we've mentioned, is about intentionally focusing on what is going right.
And the research backs it up. Reduced depression, increased life satisfaction.
Yes, meta-analyses show significant benefits. Simple practices like writing down 3 things you're grateful for daily or doing gratitude rounds with family or friends can make a difference.
And positive self-talk.
That's about consciously developing a more supportive inner dialogue, counteracting that harsh inner critic.
So instead of, I'll never get this right, maybe something like, I'm learning, or this is challenging, but I can figure it out.
Exactly. Noticing the negative thought and intentionally reframing it into something more encouraging, more kind. Experimenting to find phrases that feel authentic to you is key.
So as we wrap up this compilation, wow, it's really clear, isn't it? Joy isn't just one simple thing.
Not at all. It's multifaceted, and crucially, it's something we can actively cultivate through so many different intentional practices.
The most valuable thing now, maybe, is for you listening to just pause and consider which of these ideas, these insights, resonated most strongly with you.
Did a particular strategy or perspective spark something? A flicker of recognition or curiosity?
We really encourage you to take just one small step this week. Explore one of the practices we touched on.
Maybe it's trying that 1-minute morning check-in. Maybe it's starting a simple gratitude list. Maybe it's just noticing one limiting belief without judgment.
Remember that big changes often start small. Every single effort you make, no matter how tiny it seems, to invite more joy into your life is absolutely worthwhile.
It truly is an investment in yourself.
Thank you so much for joining us for this special AI experiment today. As we mentioned, Damianne will be back with a brand new conversation next time.
We hope this compilation offered some useful reminders or fresh perspectives.
And as you move through the rest of your day, perhaps I could leave you with this question to ponder. What small condition can you create right now or later today to invite even the tiniest spark of joy into your experience?